Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, CEO, keeper of the brand, marketing and digital agency.
We're focused on being premier resources for the business and entrepreneurship. We bring you weekly business advice, tips, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview some of the top business and community leaders in the industry, Ray.
And I'm very excited because we have somebody with us who you wouldn't know it, but she is a vet in the community area. She's a community leader, Pat Daly, Patricia Chambers Daly. She's the senior director of the development at Our Children Incorporated. Now, Our Children Incorporated, what they do is they help incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women and their children successfully rejoin the community, reunite with their families, build healthy, independent, and secure lives. That, to me, is just a mission that is incredible and noble and difficult and challenging. So we're so excited to share the information. Thank you very much for joining us today, Pat.
Well, thank you, both of you, for having me here. It's a pleasure.
We're so excited. I mean, to have you be the catalyst and the person that's kind of like a pathway to reentry is really, really key. And so can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you even step foot into this world?
Oh, sure. So I'm a lifelong Long Islander. Been here 30 years. I've been doing fundraising for 33 years. I have two beautiful daughters in their 20s, and I've spent most of my career here on Long Island, and then I moved into working in the city for the last 10 years. I found Our Children actually in the midst of COVID. So I was unemployed in the beginning of COVID, and I was introduced to Our Children by a colleague from the Sisters of St. Dominic. I was them for 15 years, and Sister Tisa Fitzgerald, who was the executive director at the time and hired me, really, how do you say no to a nun, right?
Oh my goodness!
I'd be afraid of the ruler. I have Catholic school, memories.
Yes,
so.
This is your calling.
Yes.
You listen.
And that's what that's what the sisters taught me, is that this is my calling, to be a development professional. And she stepped down as president, Sister Tisa did it, at the congregation in 2021 so that she could be president of her congregation, the Sisters of St. Joseph in Brentwood. And now I have the honor of working with Dr. Alethea Taylor, who's now our new executive director. And I can't say new too much anymore. She's been there almost over 2 years.
So, Pat, tell us about some of the services that you offer, because I think going in, it's very difficult to, how do you do what you do? I mean, that's such a difficult scenario. So how do you go about that? What services do you offer?
I will try to be brief because it's a
share.
lot that we do. So we actually start in the prisons.
Wow.
So we have the contract with the state to do services in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, Taconic Correctional Facility, and we also have with the city Rikers. We have the Rose M. Singer Women's Facility on Rikers Island. And so in the prison, we provide parenting education. We provide workshops, educational pieces. We staff the only nursery in prison nursery at Bedford Hills. So a woman who comes in pregnant can stay with her baby in the nursery for 12 months, which is the key, to keeping that connection happening. And then if she's not finishing her sentence at that time, the baby usually goes to a family member, but it's our responsibility to make sure that baby continually comes back and keeps visiting with her mom and spending her time with her mom. We also have a very comprehensive visiting program, so making sure that the kids, wherever they are in New York State, most of them, we bus them, we drive them. They can come for a day once a month. They can come from long weekends if they're too far away. And then we have this amazing summer program where they actually can come and stay with a host family in the area. Every day they get to go into the prison and spend the day with their mom. It's almost like day camp at the prison. And it's the one and only time that mom gets to look at her child and say, "I'll see you tomorrow." And they come back for 4 days in a row. So it's really amazing. Once and they know about our women know about us in the prison. Once they are ready to come out, then they come to us on Long Island City. And so we have housing, we have childcare, we have workforce development, we have mental health services, we have a food pantry to make sure that our families have food security, 2 thrift shops, so making sure that they have the clothing and the furniture to support. And so those are all the things that we have learned that women need when they come out of prison. Because if they don't know about us, they usually are handed a bag of clothing and a Metro card to travel. And 9 times out of 10, they end up in a shelter or someplace they're going back to the community where they were tempted, where they had made wrong choices. And so coming to someplace like us where they have the support of other women who've been through it, the children become best friends and family, it really makes a huge difference in the lives of these women.
So you're really creating a community there.
We are.
Can you share with us a story of someone that you've worked with and how impactful that is?
Wow, I've got too many.
I'm sure.
So
Yes.
I want to talk about one woman who, one of the things that I'm most proud of is our children actually hires our women. So probably about, we have about 80 employees, and probably about at least 20 of them to 25 of them are women that have been formerly incarcerated. And so I'm going to use a different name, but Lily, actually, when she went into prison, her children were young, under 10 years old. And she had a great sister who took them in, but her sister lived in Virginia. And so when she heard about our children, she's like, oh my God, I'd love my children to visit, but the state doesn't pay for travel, visiting from out of state. So they'll pay for a lot of our times they'll pay for our buses or one person driving a child. But Virginia was too far. And that's where our funders come in, because we have got some amazing funders who will help us to underwrite the cost of airfare for these children to come up and visit. And they came up every year, at least once a year. On the years that we could do it twice, we would do it twice a year. And the bond that was built between her 2 children, who are now in their 20s and who are super excited to actually now come and speak to other children and families is amazing. And she is now working for us in our workforce development program.
Oh wow, that's as impactful as you can get. You've covered all bases there. Mm-hmm. That's just incredible. Now I'm going to go to the name, Our Children. So Our Children Inc. Where did the name come from?
So a lot of people, when I say Our Children, they think of OUR. Mm-hmm. But our name is spelled HOUR, and it is the recognizing the most important hours in the life of a child with an incarcerated mom, and that is the hour of her arrest, the hour of their visit, and the hour of their reunification.
Okay, so that makes sense to me now. Now,
I'm getting cold chills just sitting here, because you just can't imagine how someone's life can change in an instant.
It's got to be so challenging. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it is such a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are so many different misconceptions that people have about what you do.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's not a misconception actually about our children. I think it's a misconception about the women we serve.
Right.
So I was at a business networking meeting in Queens several months ago, and I was talking to a gentleman who was a prospective employer of our women. And the first question he asked me was, why are they in prison? What did they go to prison for? And I always answer, it's true, I answer that question, I don't know. Because I think it's not the woman made bad choices. She didn't have many choices to make. She was trying to take care of her children, and she ended up in prison. But the woman who goes into prison is not the same woman who comes out of prison. She has worked really hard while she's in there to educate herself, to become a better parent, to parent from the inside. So we actually give them the opportunity, we call it advocacy, to be able to talk to the schools that their children go to the doctors that their children go to, so that she can be still a primary parent of their children. And so when she comes out, she's a very different person. She's filled with hope. She wants to be able to do well with for her children. And so they're really, I've never seen such a a determination and courage of these women who come out and say, I want to do better. Unfortunately, our society doesn't always allow that to happen, and that's why it's important to have an organization like ours to really be pushing them and saying, you can do this and this can help. Yeah.
It's so great that you're trying to keep these families together, because people get lost. They get lost in the system. They get lost with a distance from their children. And it's so touching, right? And so I would like to find out, what, based on your, Our Children, and I love the name, but Our Children, are you also, how are you advocating for the mom? Are you helping her with continuing education classes and helping her, become a better woman when she leaves?
Right. I think the name actually came from our very beginnings. Sister Tisa was actually taking care of the children of incarcerated moms. The convent that we now have our first house in is they were actually fostering the children, and then they started to bring the children up to visit, and then they saw that the women had a need, and so they started all these different programs. So as much as our name focuses on the children, our services focus on the women, because if you don't have a strong mother in the family, you're not going to have strong children. And so we really do, as I said, when a woman comes to us, she's living with us in community with other women and children. Then she, when she gets settled, she gets to go to what we call our Working Women program, which is our workforce development. And it's very much a personal program. Where are you in your education? Where are you in your skills development? Most of these women have not seen a computer, worked with a cell phone, and so it's just a matter of getting their skills up and comfortable with the technology of the day, and then helping them write a resume, helping them do mock interviews. We've had corporations who've come in and volunteer and walk them through mock interviews. We do financial workshops so that they know how to do banking and how to, just be able to budget and save, because these women come out with literally nothing. They don't have a bank account, and it takes a little while to get all of that, even just getting their driver's license or their copies of their birth certificate, things that they need to be able to get a job. And while she's there, we have a child care program. So we have the TOTS program that works with kids under 4 years old. And we have the after-school program that works with kids who are 5 years old and older. And we've got a teen scene program that keeps the teens connected and basically off the streets. But also for the teens, it's about connecting with other kids that know who they are and what they've been through and have the experience that they've had. So it's really kind of cool that we have the gamut of services to make sure this family thrives.
You are listening to Tara Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, and our guest today is Patricia Chambers Daly. She's the Senior Director of Development at Our Children Incorporated. Now, your work in services, all of that is experiential, so it's got to be tough to get folks to understand your mission and just how impactful it is and how broad in scope it is. How do you get folks to understand and sponsor and underwrite these programs?
Well, the first thing I always do is try to get them there, because I've never had somebody say no to me once I've given them a tour of Long Island City. Or even more impactful is we have what we call coffee and conversations with the women inside Bedford Hills. And so you can come and talk to, it's very, as you might know about a prison, it's very structured.
Right.
You have a lot of things that you need to be able to do before you get there. But it's really kind of cool to come up and talk to the women and hear what their stories are and realize that they're very human, and they have the same struggles that we have outside of the prison. It just makes it more difficult because they've got the bars in between and it's really hard for that. But once I have somebody could come and visit us, it's really been wonderful. But we also I think we're doing a much better job of the last year or so to get our word out from the media. Mm-hmm. We had a corporate sponsor put together an amazing short film for us that we can share with our donors. We have I've got some really great young people on my staff who do a lot of the social media and the e-blasts and being able to tell that story. I'm a storyteller, and I love to tell that story. And so finding the ways to get that story out the best way we can do it.
There are so many stories. I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you actually sparked a question for me earlier. You mentioned that, an employer really wants to go to, well, what was she in prison for?
Right.
And we've seen the movies, right?
Sure.
We've seen the movies where applicants are sitting down, the woman is looking at his resume, the application for a job, and they get to the question, have you been in prison? Have you been convicted? Have you been convicted of a felony? Right? And they stop. And you see in the movies that a lot of people just give up at that time. How do you help them overcome that section? How do you help
Oh, my God. We've got some great therapists in our mental health services. We've got some wonderful people who come into our Working Women program and talk to the women about communication skills, and being honest. The great thing about New York is that they did that campaign of don't check the box. And so they don't have to check the box that says, are you previously incarcerated? The challenge then is when the employer then goes to do a background check, it comes up. And so you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. So we try to get the women to understand is to be able to tell that story of what happened, why I went into prison is not the same person that comes out of prison, and being able to tell that story in a compelling way to be able to understand, for that person to be able to understand. And a lot of the times we're doing that we look to corporations who will be interested in having an intern, get introduced to our women, understand what the issues are, and then be able to hire them full time if they are willing to give them a chance.
Right. So it's a process. It's not me just walking off the street. Hey,
Right.
I'm trying to apply for this job.
Right.
But now you know the person, you've established a relationship with them,
Yeah.
and you're kind of, allowing them to put their past behind and moving forward,
Yeah.
which is really great. And so, what do you like most about your job, Pat?
The relationships. That's Ray and I were talking earlier. Building relationships is what fundraiser is all about. I've had the pleasure of mentoring young people in the industry, and I always say to them, if you are not passionate about the mission, if you don't understand what the mission is all about, you might as well go sell refrigerators. I can teach you how to fundraise, I can teach you about direct marketing, and I can teach you about major gifts and whatever, but if you don't have that that oomph, that passion about what you're doing, I think that makes life very difficult. And wherever I've been, I've always found, and for me, it's about where women, children, families. Those are the areas that I am passionate about, and so that's where I usually end up working, is for those kinds of organizations.
And it's obvious, just in how you are and how you portray yourself when you're out at networking events. Always smiling, never. And you would think the mission, although noble, and although there is the rehabilitation aspect, there's a lot of negativity when you're going to a jail. I mean, it's a really difficult environment, So despite that, you're always smiling, always positive. How do folks who volunteer for your organization and work with you, how did they kind of come to grips with that aspect of things and turn it around?
Well, our volunteers get to be introduced to our women who are already very successful in this mission, so that we don't just throw them at the prison,
right.
First thing out.
That makes sense. Okay.
So a lot of times we have some wonderful companies who'll do their service day with us, and we have, again, this amazing food pantry that services the Queens community, and that's a great day of service where you can come in and stock the shelves for us and pass out the food bags and then clean up. So it's a really great day to be with us, and so they get introduced to us, in that kind of, I'm being very helpful to the whole community, not just the women. And then they can come and talk to the women in our housing, our Working Women program, especially the companies that come in and do the interviews and the financial training and the workshops. They get to meet these women one-on-one, and they understand, for the most part, they are filled with hope, and they're filled with excitement that they're out, and they're getting their children back, and they're getting their lives back. And so it's very different. What I think is interesting also is about the experience in the prison. the first time I went in, it was for our Mother's Day celebration. So we were bringing up a ton of kids and their family members to celebrate Mother's Day with their mom. It was the Saturday before Mother's Day. And I've never been in a prison before. I was really very nervous about getting there. The experience getting in is harrowing. There, nobody smiles.
Right.
You can't walk in with any electronics. You can only walk in with your driver's license and the car keys. That's it. So you have to leave everything else behind. You're walking through first this section, then this section, and gate closes, gate opens. And so that all kind of made me very nervous until I got into the auditorium where a celebration was happening. And the moms are funny and warm and welcoming. Our staff is always there to help out. We've got volunteers. We were serving the food for the day. The children come in, and the excitement you see between mom looking at the door, waiting for her child to come through the door. It was just amazing. They danced with us. They have a step group up there that was amazing to watch. It just was, you didn't feel like you were in a prison at that moment. And
Right.
so it's about just making the introductions to people to see that there is a lot more good that happens than the negative.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Patricia Chambers Daly, Senior Director of Development at Our Children, Inc. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with Ray Schwetz on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
As a nonprofit business, just looking at it from the business aspect of things, that's got to be tough, doing the fundraising and so forth. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in operating as a nonprofit business?
I think two things. One is the funding mix. Mm-hmm. A lot of organizations, they are focused on one particular thing. A lot of, and you've seen it be to the detriment. If you're 80 to 85% government funded, it's tough when the government starts to do their cutbacks. And so we've looked at our budgets over the years, and we were very low on our government funding and very big on our foundation, corporate, and individual giving. Now we are probably a third at this. Our government funding is a lot bigger. And then our foundations is the next piece. And then, of course, individual giving is our third. So the funding mix is really the most important piece from a business perspective. And focusing on growth, I think, is the second thing. We don't want to just stand still, and because we're really good at what we do, we want to make sure that gets out there. So we are actually having conversations about possibly taking on another of New York State women's prisons to be able to provide those services to those women who are very much way upstate, and right now they don't have the opportunity to visit with their kids the way we are able to do at Bedford and Taconic. So I think growth is another thing that we need to always be focused on.
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, it's a lot, right? It's a lot, and it's a lot of burden for someone to bear. And hearing that you went through that process, right? It's you're a blessing. Your organization is a blessing, and so I'm sure you're small but mighty. And so, how do you work with other organizations to collaborate? Right? I know you mentioned that you have employers that you bring in, but do you have other collaborations and partners that
absolutely.
You're open to working with?
Yeah. We have several partners in the New York City as an upstate area. So places like Osborne Society, Fortune Society, they also do the services that we do. We can't do everything. So Osborne is a good partner with us at the Rose M. Singer Center on Rikers Island because they also serve men. So our uniqueness is that we only serve women and their families. And so there's a lot of other organizations that do both. Or they say we do it better for women, so we will partner with them. They handle the men's side of the prison at Rikers Island, and we handle the women's side of the prison. So it's those kind of partnerships. We also do that a lot with our advocacy. We are very much a part of the campaign to close Rikers. So our Dr. Taylor is on that commission to be able to look at what's the best way to make that happen. So we are very active in the advocacy world. And again, our government partners and our corporate partners are a really great place.
And you hear so much about the campaign to close Rikers, like where would these people go?
Well, the idea, and again, I'm not the expert here, but I know that they're thinking about is creating smaller jails in each of the boroughs. So sharing the burden across the city and making it more, I don't want to say friendly, but it'll be certainly safer when you don't have a huge amount of people all in one place. And the other piece that a lot of our advocates and partners are focusing on is opportunities that take you away from going to prison. So being alternatives to incarceration. I knew I would come up with the phrase sooner or later. So alternatives to incarceration. So one of our partners actually helps. We are a place where women who are at Rikers right now, and they're minor in terms of what they went in for, but they would normally go to Bedford or Taconic or something like that. They're coming to us to live with us and go through our programs as an alternative to incarceration. So that's another place that we have some strong partnerships.
And I think that's where we would want to arrive is where we're coming up with alternatives to that. Pat, as we come to a close, what's the one thought that you want to make sure that you leave our listener with? And also, please give us your contact information where folks can find you.
I think the one thing I would like people to understand is the women who come out of prison are not the women who go into prison. And to please, support them. And that's why, or support our children because we're supporting them, to make sure that they have the avenues to be successful coming out and reentering. These are mothers who want to be with their children. They want to be successful. And the way that you can help us is various ways. The volunteer programs that I talked about that you can come in and help us with. We have an amazing corporate partnership program where financially as well as volunteer-wise that people can help, corporations can help us. We have a monthly donor program that is a really great way for individuals to be consistent donors to our children. So there's very different ways that they can do this. They can reach out to me, Pat Chambers Daly, at Our Children. My email is very simple, pdaly, P-D-A-L-Y, @ourchildren.org. And the phone number is 718-433-4724.
Okay. And also you have a website?
We do, www.ourchildren.org.
This way folks can look and see the breadth of everything that you're offering because it's truly amazing, and it's hard to cover it all in a half hour, but I think we did a pretty good job.
I think you did. Thank you so much for having me.
No, yes, it's a pleasure to have you on.
I'd like to leave you with DB's philosophy. Be the kind of leader you will follow. Sapella.
We want to thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, your co-host and producers. Visit nccradio.org for more information. We're available on Odyssey, TuneIn, iHeartRadio as a podcast, and iTunes, Android podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.